Here we go, Aktiedagen Lund. Now it's time to start an English presentation, and I am so happy to give my warm welcome to CEO Jack Egelund Madsen. He is the CEO of Diagonal Bio, a company that is developing a platform for diagnosis and detection of viruses and bacteria. So very up to date, I must say, to the current situation. So warm welcome, Jack, and the stage is yours.
Thank you for the introduction, and I'll get right to it. So at Diagonal Bio, we are creating the diagnostic platform of tomorrow. Our first product, Penval, has the potential to be the fastest, high-precision diagnostic platform for detection of any pathogen. Essentially, it can help the healthcare community to be prepared. It can help prevent and also diagnose. Penryle detects genetic material in real time with very high accuracy and sensitivity using a simple one-step assay. Essentially bringing the gold standard of diagnostics to point of care, enabling rapid disease testing beyond the confines of labs and hospitals. The world needs high-quality diagnostics. I think this is pretty evident on top of this COVID-19 crisis. We need diagnostics which is accurate, rapid, easy to use, available at point of care, and also is cost efficient. Penval can help solve some of these problems. So the main problem today with diagnostic testing is that they are normally outsourced to external laboratories. This means long response times, risk of spread of infections, and delay in treatment. Penval can speed up diagnostic processes at point of care without compromising accuracy and sensitivity. Penval can help quick identification of infections at point of care, can help optimize treatment, earlier treatment, and can also ensure that we isolate patients faster. Every time we have an outbreak, we are always one step behind in that we do not have rapid diagnostics to detect the new organisms. With Penval, this will change. Diagnostic tests are often the least expensive component of the healthcare pathway. Yet they influence more than 70% of the healthcare decisions. Again, with Penval, we can take the right decisions very early on in the process. Frequent and real-time testing are critical to reduce infections. This was a study that was performed in 2021 between Harvard and Ohio University on COVID. What you can see on the gray bar in the bottom, if you don't have any testing at all, you will have 100% spread into this control group. Then you can see that the more that you test, more frequent you test, the more you can limit spread of infections. Where it gets really interesting is that even if you test every 3 days, if it takes more than 2 hours to get the result, you will still have up to 45% spread of the disease into the population. However, if you can get the results in real time or instantaneously where you are at the test center, then you can limit the spread of disease to almost zero. And that's exactly what we can offer with Panvara. This is a study we did, exploratory study we did before Christmas, where we detected COVID samples below 10 minutes. So what you can see on the graph is that we have the negative controls in the bottom. We see no exponential amplification. And then in the positive samples, as you can see here with the black arrow, we get very clear signals. And of these 35 samples we did in the exploratory study, we had an average time to positive of 9.85 seconds, or minutes, sorry. Again, pinpointing that we have a really solid technology here. Penryle is unique and unlike any other diagnostic tool on the market today. We have high speed, ultra-fast time to positive, as I just showed you, below 10 minutes. We also did another study in 2021, where we tested 144 samples, and here we had an accuracy of 96.5%. This is, of course, something we will keep improving. But still, we have this very fast system that's very accurate. On top of that, we can test multiple samples in parallel, whether this is multiple diseases or multiple patients. Combining this package is unique. This is creating commercial opportunities for Penryle at a global scale. Here I would like to introduce Penryle. As you can see, this is a small portable box. It's half the size of a laptop. Of course, it has more depth. Very easy to use interface. And you can see the green thing inside, that's the consumable part, and this is where we can screen for different types of infectious diseases. In this model, we have 8 channels, meaning we could screen for 8 different types of pathogens. But we could also screen 8 patients. We also had other prototypes with 96 wells, meaning we could do mass testing. What is the technology behind Panvara? The technology is using a combination of loop-mediated Israel amplification, it's also called LAMP, and then electrochemical sensing. And I can break that down even further. What we do specifically is that we identify specific regions within the pathogens. Those regions are then amplified exponentially, and by coupling it to electrochemical sensing, we can detect this very early on and very precisely. So what makes the Penval technology unique? First of all, we have an accuracy in line with the gold standard of infectious disease testing today, which is the PCR. We can do this up to 70% cheaper. The reason we can do that is with a normal PCR, you need to do a sample that needs to be sent to a central laboratory. They have to extract DNA and RNA, and then they run it on the machine. With Penval, you can take a sample directly, put it into the machine, close the lid, and within these 10 to 15 minutes, you will get a result. It's very reliable and has very low sensitivity. It's very easy to add new mutations or pathogens. And the technology here is protected, so we have patents in process with a priority date in March 2020. So looking at this in a broader perspective, we have hardly any sample preparation required. We can detect anything with DNA or RNA. It's very quick. As I showed you before, we can detect within below 10 minutes. We can run everything at a single temperature. It's very easy to customize and use the system. We can do this at reduced costs. It's ideal for point of care. You do not need to ship to a central laboratory. You can do everything yourself if you have this small box in front of you. And then it's a universal detection system. We are not just one of another COVID testing company. You can use this platform technology for basically everything. Whether you want to test for Ebola, sexually transmitted diseases, or whatever it is, we can do it with Panvara. And then one very unique feature here as well, I already brought this point up, is that we can test multiple samples in parallel. Today, if you want to do a PCR test with testing for COVID, you get a result whether you're positive or negative, typically. With Penval, we could test all the different COVID mutations, influenza A and B, and respiratory bacteria in one and the same analytical go within these 10 minutes. A little bit about Penval and our development. This is showing our first benchtop device that was developed in June 2020. It's a single channel system, and we use this to validate the technology. So here we tested our 100 artificial viruses. And later on, we have also done, you can say, tested clinical samples from COVID patients to show we have an accuracy in line with PCR. It was a small study here. We had 4 negative and 8 positive samples. But again, just proving the technology here, we can detect very, very fast and with the same accuracy as with the PCR. So if you benchmark, this is benchmarking up against the gold standard of diagnostic testing today, which is the PCR. PCR typically take a couple of hours to run. And this does not include that you do this, take a sample and you send it to a central laboratory where they first have to extract DNA or RNA. This is only the runtime on the machine. With Penryle, we can do the whole process from taking the samples to getting the results within 10 to 15 minutes. So a very clear competitive advantage. If you're looking to mass testing potential, then as I showed you with this prototype that was in this presentation, we had 8 channels. We have also had a prototype in 96 channels, which means we can easily enable a mass testing with the Panvara. Also, if you look into cost versus accuracy, you have probably all been in the situation. You get a positive hit on a COVID test, one of these lateral flow tests, and then you need to reconfirm with the PCR anyway. With Penval, you can avoid that. You still have the accuracy as you would have with the PCR today. And therefore, we can do it much cheaper. If you look into the infectious disease testing market today, then it's currently valued at around $34 billion US. You can say the 3 main categories in the infectious disease testing area is number 1 is these antigen tests, lateral flow tests. The problem with these tests is that of course they're very easy to use, but they're also very unreliable. Then we have the PCR technologies. They're accurate, but they're time consuming. And the third one here is these CRISPR-based technologies, which are very capable technologies, but they're also highly complex and also highly costly. So what are the problems we can solve with Penryle? Today's platform for infectious disease testing either, as I just mentioned, they're accurate, but then they're slow, complicated, and expensive. Or you have something that's unreliable, quick, easy to use, and cheap. Second problem is that most of these diagnostics tests, they are diagnosed specific. They don't have this holistic perspective where you can test for a lot of different things. You only test one thing at a time. With Penryle, we have the potential to be the fastest, accurate, cost-efficient, universal platform for testing of multiple infectious diseases or patients in parallel with extreme ease of use. This is unique. If you look into different market niches, where we see a perfect fit with Panvara, then we have identified 3 different. The first one here is tailored regional specific panels. This is where we will make specific cocktails depending on where in the world you are living. So you can imagine if you had the Penryle on the market in November, we could have made this kit where you could basically test for all different types of COVID mutations, influenza A and B, and respiratory bacteria in one and the same test within these 10 to 15 minutes. Could also be that you want to travel somewhere exotic, and when you come back, you can be tested for with an exotic cocktail. Could also be situations where young people, for example, want to be tested for sexually transmitted diseases. Normally they have to sit in anxiety, wait for 14 days for the result. With Panvara, we could test everything within these 10 to 15 minutes. Second one here is using Penryle for state-of-the-art outbreak system. Penryle has very high sensitivity, which will enable identification of these infectious disease pathogens very early on, even before you have symptoms. You can imagine that you would have this system standing before you're allowed to board a plane to the US, or big music festivals or concerts before you allow people to enter. The last one here is using Penryle for disease and treatment monitoring directly at the hospitals. Based on the real-time capabilities of Penryle, we will be able to validate treatment at the hospitals. Very briefly about the commercial plan. The go-to-market strategy here will be based on the razor blade model. Both Penryle and the kits will be manufactured with industrial partners and distributed from them as well. And again, the main driver for the revenue here will be the kits or these different panels of diseases that you need to use with Penryle. Very briefly about the Milestones and Financials. The company was founded in Q1 2020. This is also where we have the priority date for the patents. We did a COVID study to validate the device and technology. Based on that, we had almost 10 million SEK from private investors put into the company. After that, we have tested both viruses, bacteria, and fungi to show the robustness of the assay. And then in July 2021, we went on the stock exchange in Stockholm and raised around 40 million SEK. And we have done proof of our concept of our new prototype. We have implemented a quality management system and are looking into the regulatory process. And are also looking into setting up clinical studies in different disease areas. When we have the regulatory approval, we'll be ready for the large-scale manufacturing and scale-up. And of course, we don't envision to go all the way by ourselves, so they can also be done by partnerships. Very briefly about the team. We have Per Henter as Chief Financial Officer, Andreas Nyberg as Chief Scientific Officer, and he's also one of the co-founders of the company. Jay Shen as a Product Development Leader. Roberto Monita as Research Scientist, who have generated a lot of these exploratory data that I've shown here. We recently had Roman join the team as well as a scientist to help optimize our system. We have Stefan Magnusson as our Quality Assurance Manager. And then the two latest additions to the team is Caroline as our Grant Manager and Emily as our Lab Tech. And then we have Pernille as external HR and also Roger as our external consultant helping with our quality and regulatory processes. We have a very strong and professional board with Eva Nielsegaard in the board, in the chair. We also have Kerstin Jacobsen, former CEO of Medicon Village, in the board. Then we have Edward Hall on the board, and we have Kushika Punyani, who was also one of the co-founders of the company. So a very strong team. So the last slide, the last I will say here today is that our vision is to limit the spread of infectious disease worldwide by creating an accurate, easy-to-use, cost-efficient, quick, and universal diagnostic platform. We call it Panvara. And with that, I will say thank you, and if there's questions, then I will be happy to answer.
Thank you so much. So the company was listed in the July last year,
Yes.
and you became the CEO only in February last year as well. So can you tell me a little bit about your own background? You've been working, I think, only in Denmark, so maybe the Swedish audience might not be very familiar with your background. Could you give us some heads up?
Yeah. So I have a technical background, so I have a PhD in biotechnology and have been working as an associate professor at Copenhagen University within gene discovery. And on top of that, I had business administration from Copenhagen Business School. And the last 10 years before joining Diagonal, I've been working in different managerial, also commercial role in the CROs, pharma, different type of companies.
Okay, so what would you say are the main reasons that you got this job? What is your strengths?
I think this understanding both the science part and the business part is something that's one of the reasons that they picked me to actually help with this, bring this forward.
So the company was listed, as I said, in July. So what have you been working with, apart from working with preparing and preparing for the listing? What are your main goals and what has been your most important focus?
In the initial phase, as you say, it was to get the listing process finalized. And of course, that took a lot of effort. And since then, of course, you can say our primary focus is to get product to market. That's our only focus, basically. So making sure all the things are in place to make sure we get quickly to market. That's the main task.
Thank you. So you were founded during the company was founded during the COVID-19 crisis, and you say that you are not mainly COVID-19 company at all. You are all focusing on all types of viruses and bacteria and fungi as well. But even so, is the company in any way depending on COVID-19, and how will the business model survive once the pandemic is behind us? Hopefully, it will be someday.
Yes, and that's also why I stress this out. So we basically it's a universal platform.
Yeah.
So we are not depending on COVID. And I think because of this pandemic, there's a lot of competitors also going only with that focus. Our focus is more broad. So we will not be dependent on COVID. And there's many different segments that you can go into. And of course, pricing and everything will also depend on what you're doing. If you're saving life directly at the hospitals, you can normally have a higher price. Whereas if you go into COVID testing, for example, where there's a lot of other competitors, probably you will have to go for less pricing. But then, of course, you get the volumes.
Mm.
Yeah.
But how will the market be affected by the COVID-19 chaos and all the disaster that has brought with it? Is the market different for your kind of business than it was before once we will be out?
Yes, I think there's two different things here. So first of all, you could say people will understand what this is all about. Everybody have been tested for COVID. We all know the problems that is with the quick test today, that they are not very reliable, and you need to go to the PCR test, and it takes a long time. So basically, everybody understands the case here. I also think that I showed these numbers, so that the market value was valued around $34 billion. I'm pretty sure those numbers are already outdated, as all governments now are trying to make programs and make sure that they are more prepared in the future. So from our point of view, I think it just creates additional opportunity for us.
Yeah, but are you big enough to use this interest in the market? I mean, you say that the market is now valued to 34 billion annually in US dollars, of course. But are you big enough to address the market, or what are your advantages and what are your challenges in addressing and taking the cuts here?
As I also showed on this milestone plan that I showed before, one of the tasks is that we will find somebody to partner with. If you want to go out quickly and you want to go out big time, then you need to have somebody who already has the distribution channels ready, already have the contact to the hospitals, medical doctors, and all of these things. So that is definitely the plan.
So you say that you have the possibility to address all types of viruses and bacteria, but is it good to go for any, or do you need some adaptation for all the new viruses, or is it good to go just day one? Or do you need to adjust it in any way?
There's one small component that needs to change depending on what it is that we are targeting. So we would need to know the infectious disease pathogen, but as soon as we do that, then we can design very specific primers to identify this pathogen. And I mean, technically, this is something we can do over a couple of days. But of course, to go through the regulatory process, that's a whole different story.
And is it easy to use, or do you need some education in order to handle it? And how do people learn it? Do you teach them, or?
We will teach them, or the distributor will help teach them, but it is extremely easy to use. So it will be, you can say, you click in a panel of these where you want to test for, and then you have a touch screen, and it's very intuitive if you get instruction on the touch screen as well. So basically, it's not like you need a medical training or anything like that. Of course, you need to understand how to use it, but it's going to be very easy to use.
Mm. And what can you say about your sales pitch and your why do the hospitals and other buyers would like to buy this? I mean, how can they earn from it?
As I also said today, I mean, this with having a PCR as the gold standard of the diagnostic testing today. So even if you go to a hospital, for example, if you have to send samples to a central laboratory before you get an answer, you lose valuable time. Getting the response immediately is really needed. As I also showed on this study from Howard and Ohio University, if it takes more than 2 hours to get the result, even though you test a lot, then you can still have up to 45% spread of the disease, whatever it is, into the population. So speed and accuracy are extremely important. And then, of course, if you want to go out global, then pricing or cost efficiency will also be an important factor.
Mm. And how do you value the competition?
I think it's like everybody in any other area. If there's a lot of money to be made, there will be a lot of competition.
Of course, yeah.
We have protected our technology with a patent, so nobody else can come in and take it away from us.
So how long is the patent for?
The normal patent will last 20 years.
Okay.
So counting from March 2020. So we still have some years to go, I would say.
Yeah, sure. So which are your main competitors, would you say?
Right now, I mean, it depends on how you see it. Because do you favor accuracy or do you favor ease of use? I mean, right now there are two different categories. Mm-hmm. What we can offer is that we put all of this together. So you don't have to compromise accuracy or price. You get both with Penval.
So you're not more expensive than the same type of outcome?
We will be much cheaper than the PCR because we don't have a lot of these time-consuming or people-handling steps in between.
And how reliable are your results? They
are very reliable. As you also showed you, so we had this exploratory test with 144 samples, where we showed an accuracy of 96.5%. But of course, this is something that we expect to improve even further.
And how far can you go, would you say, in terms of reliability?
I mean, that's a difficult question, but I would say definitely we should aim for 99.x%.
Mm. Can you tell us a little bit about your plans for the market penetration? I mean, you say that you are addressing the battle against the infections and so diseases worldwide, but where can you? Is it Europe and US, and how will you penetrate the markets?
I can say what's already in the prospectus, and that is we will aim for Europe first, and then we will go for US afterwards. And the plan is to initiate the commercial activities this year, and then we should have revenue break even next year. Mm. That's in the prospectus.
That's in the prospectus. Yes, yeah. And what do you consider to be the main risks? I saw that you are talking about the normal ones, the clinical risks, and the market, the time to go to market risks, and so on. Can you elaborate a little bit about the risks?
Yes. So I think the main risk, as we see it now, is that they changed the IVDR regulations, which means that you need to go to a notified body to get onto the market and get your CE marking. And right now there's only 5 organs in Europe where you can get this done, which means there's a queue.
Yeah.
And that could, of course, also affect us because this is something that's out of our control, basically.
So how do you consider the risk now? Is it, have you heard anything? Will it take longer or?
Right now, the message is that there can be some delays. But that's all I can say.
Okay, yeah. And other risks?
That would be the primary risk, I think.
Mm. And how do you? Can you say about the financial risks? Are you financed enough, or do you need more resources?
As I also showed on this milestone plan, then at some point, if you really want to go large-scale manufacturing and scale up, we would need additional capital into the company. Or we would need a partner who will also partner with us and help us go out in a big way. And we will, of course, look into both options. Yeah.
So your aim is to start a clinical study to confirm the existing studies this year. When will you end this clinical study? How long will it take, would you say?
That I don't want to comment on here.
Okay. Can you comment anything on when you can start this clinical study, or will it be before summer, or?
We will do this as quickly as possible.
Okay,
I think that's
so nothing.
I can say. Yeah.
And other things that are important in the near time for the development?
I think we have a very strong team, both internal team, and we also have some very strong partners. We have very good support from the board, so I think we have everything we need. Mm. We just need to get the work done now and go to market.
Okay, so I wish you all the best with that and good luck. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.